someone who struggles with vulnerability and you think to yourself, well, I want to become more open to my partner or my friends or family, but I want to be able to do that without getting hurt, this video is for you. So recently I wrote a blog post on the topic of 3 powerful benefits of vulnerability to unlock deeper connections. And in that blog post, I talk about 3 benefits of vulnerability that I've personally experienced and that I just wish more people would be able to experience as well. But in effort to experience those benefits of vulnerability, you will first have to be vulnerable, right? You have to incorporate vulnerability in your relationships. I personally think this is one of the best things I've written because just the messaging of it is so powerful, and it's something that I wish you will be able to read and incorporate in your own life. If you want to read that blog post, you can go to mamamcooper.com/blog, and it will be titled 3 powerful benefits of vulnerability to unlock deeper connections in your relationships. That link will also be in this description below as well. But something happened once I wrote that blog post. Something that really came to my mind is, well, absolutely, vulnerability has all these powerful benefits, and it has all these amazing ways that it really transforms your relationships. But I would be a bit irresponsible if I continuously push being vulnerable without talking about the other side of vulnerability. I also have experienced and know that vulnerability also has another side as well that can be a bit destructive if not careful. So I was thinking about that and I thought, you know what? It would be very, very serving. It would be really important to talk about the other side of vulnerability. So this video today, we're talking about how to open up to others without getting hurt. And I have 3 main tips for you. There are 7 tips total because I don't want to make this video so long. I will make a part 2 to this video so that we can talk about the other 4 benefits. But for today, we're going to start with 3 because I don't want to make this video too long. We're going to start with the 3 tips of how to avoid getting hurt while being vulnerable and opening up to others. But we're definitely going to cover the other 4 in an upcoming video. So the first tip that I'm going to give you is don't be bullied into vulnerability. Whew. I hope you are ready for some stories because I have personal stories to tell you today. So the first tip of how to open up to others without getting hurt is to not get bullied into vulnerability. I was once upon a time bullied into vulnerability. I was getting to know a guy, and I realized we had different values. He's someone who I liked, and we had a lot of laughter together. Like he was just cool people. He was very cool, and we were both very ambitious people, and we got along very well. But I was not willing to share certain parts of my life with him. So for example, we have very different values when it comes to premarital sex. We also have very different values when it comes to visiting of the homes. So I was very clear from the beginning that I was not ready to bring him to my place. And it did not even cross my mind that he would visit my home because for me, when it comes to my home is very off limit when it comes to friends and visitors and people. So, and not to say that my friends would never visit me or that he would never visit me. It's just that I think of my place like my queendom. Like this is where my imaginations thrive. My home is where my creativity thrives. If you came to my house, you will most likely see papers all over the place. You will see post-it notes. This is where I allow my mind to completely go wild and think of all the things I want to accomplish, the things that pop in my head. I think of my home as, if you step into my house, you will get to know me on a whole deeper level because I live myself. And because I live myself, I never feel the reason to have to hide anything. So I pretty much like write things all over the place. So my home is a place that I consider very private because again, that is where the depth of my mind and my soul just lets out. So I really don't allow people to just visit my home. And I knew from the very beginning that I was not going to just bring this guy over to my house, because we were not in a serious relationship and we were just getting to know each other. So he did not really understand why it was that I was consistently not inviting him to my house. So whenever he came to visit me, we will always stay downstairs in the car in front of the building, and we'll just hang out in the car and just talk and chat. So he will make comments like, that is just so weird. When it comes to how I view sex before marriage, or how I view a person coming to my house, he will always basically think that my boundaries were weird. And he even said to me at some point that I was not acting my age, because I was, almost 30 years old, and he did not feel that I was acting my age, because apparently to him, grown women who have their own places just invite a man up, whatever he thought, should have happened. So one day while we're on the phone, he kept on pushing, and he was just saying things like, I just don't understand, why you are the way you are. And he was just kept on pushing to just try to understand why I had certain boundaries. Even though I made it clear to him over and over that I just was not ready to invite him up. And I made it very clear to him that I don't just allow people in my space. He still kept on pushing. And at some point I snapped. And I went on a deep dive into my life. And this turned out to be about 20 to 25 minutes where I did not even know how to stop myself. I just felt so triggered, because I kept on telling this guy that I just did not want to go to certain places. Like, he wanted to get to know me on a very deep level that I was not ready to go to with him. And he kept on pushing to the point where I was on the phone. I actually was sitting right there. I was actually right here in this corner. And I completely snapped, and I went on about 20 to 25 minutes where I completely spilled out my gut. And I basically went on an entire journey of the things that happened to me, the bad, the ugly. And those are the things that influence my boundaries as to why I don't like a guy in my personal space, why I do not want to have sex before marriage. And honestly, once I was done going on this long gut spill, I was out of breath, because I felt like I was running, and I did not even know how to stop myself. And I remember when I finished sharing all these things with him, I basically was almost in complete tears. I think I was crying. And I said to him, I was not ready to go there with you and share these things with you, and you keep pushing. Are you happy now? And when I said that, he was quiet. And I will say I appreciate that the entire time I was talking, he was very quiet and listened. But at the end, when I said to him, I was not ready to go there with you, and you've been pushing me, are you happy now? He said something to me that I will never forget. And I knew from the very moment he said that this is a guy who will use my vulnerability against me. So he said to me, well, it all makes sense now. I knew something was wrong with you. I just did not know how bad and how deep it was. And I thought to myself, I didn't say anything to him, but I thought in my head, are you freaking kidding me? I just spilled my gut to you, and your remark to me is that you knew something was wrong with me. And to tell you the truth, this guy, he displayed a lot of characteristics and things that he said that I knew earlier on he had very manipulative and very unsupportive tendencies. So once I again spilled my whole gut to him, his comment and remark was just completely insensitive and very unsupportive. And I just knew that moment on that this guy would literally come and use my vulnerability against me. And I look back and I wish I did not allow myself to get bullied into being vulnerable. Because if you are not ready to go and talk about certain parts of your life, if you are not ready to share a certain part of yourself, you should not be forced to, because vulnerability needs to be encouraged, not forced. And honestly, from that moment on, I knew this relationship wasn't going to go anywhere, because again, this is a guy who, just based on what he said, I just knew one day in the future he will basically use that sentence against me, like, oh, I knew there's something wrong with you. So to reiterate, number one, or the first tip of how to protect yourself so that you don't get hurt when opening up to others, is to make sure you do not get bullied into vulnerability. Tip number two. Tip number two is to listen to your intuition. Honestly, okay, every single time that I have ignored my intuition, it always blew up my face. So tip number two, listen to your intuition, because what I've learned is that your intuition is the GPS in your body. You don't always know. So for example, when a GPS tells you to take a left, not a right, you might think, oh my God, I know where to go. But you don't know what is ahead, especially if you have Waze. You don't know what is ahead. So your intuition is your inner GPS whispering to you like, hey, you might not see the danger that's coming, but I got you. So listen to your intuition, because I know for me, earlier on, I just sensed I did not have trust for him, even though we knew each other for a bit over half a year. And I still felt that I did not trust him. And it didn't make too much sense, because he was someone who was very supportive of me. Like I said, we just got along so well. I can meet someone today without even knowing them, and my spirit can feel free to open up. But with him, I did not feel that. It was over 6 months and I still didn't feel that. So make sure you listen to your intuition when you are thinking about being vulnerable, and really see how you feel. Which leads us to number three. So tip number three of how to open up without getting hurt is to check in with yourself. So what I mean by that is, you are going to, especially when you are following your intuition or just in general, you're going to have moments where you have to take a step back and check in with yourself. You need to check to see how you feel, right? And you need to also check to see why you might or might not want to be vulnerable with someone. So I will give a personal example here as well. My partner and I, when we first started dating, in the beginning of our relationship, I used to struggle and contemplate a lot about opening up to him. So I was really afraid that I will open up to him and, he will use my vulnerability against me. And I remember at some points, like, he'll ask me certain questions of myself and I will open up to him. But it was always very hesitant. He was not forcing me to open up. And my partner was very clear from the beginning. He said to me, Mama, I want you to only tell me what you want to tell me whenever you're ready. Don't ever feel that, which, you know what? That's actually pretty amazing, because I never really thought about this, especially given that I went through a situation with another guy who basically forced me to be vulnerable. So shout out to my partner if he's watching this. But my partner and I, when we started dating, he was very crystal clear with me that he did not want me rushing my vulnerability, that he did not want me rushing to tell him things that I was not ready to tell him. He always encouraged me, like, listen, I want to get to know you on a deeper level, but I want you to only share with me when you're ready. So I try to challenge myself, because for me, I wanted a healthy and supportive relationship. I wanted to build a relationship earlier on that involved vulnerability, because I knew that for us to really get to know each other, we had to open up to each other. But still, I was struggling and I did not know exactly how to open up to him, because beside this recent guy who, forced me to vulnerability, a few years ago, I was dating a guy who I was really open with about my life and really open with about my views on marriage. And he basically just used my vulnerability against me, knowing that I was a Christian woman who had traditional values, who wanted to get married, etc. That is a whole complete video. We can talk about that another time. But this guy a few years ago completely used my vulnerability against me. And that really scared the heck out of me. It scared me to not want to be vulnerable again, because I was previously vulnerable to a guy who actually used it against me, right? So at this point, I've had two experiences. One experience with a guy who used my vulnerability against me. Another experience with a guy who, once I opened up to him, was very unsupportive, and I knew he would use my vulnerability against me. So this time around with this new partner, I did not have the courage to open up. And I remember the little times, each time I will open up to him, I will always say to him, I really hope you don't use my vulnerability against me. And I would say that whenever I would say that, it would kind of hurt him because he never understood why is it that I was always saying to him, I hope you don't use my vulnerability against me. And then one day he asked me, can I ask you a question? So I said yes. And he said to me, he asked me, has anyone ever used your vulnerability against you? So I told him yes, and I told him briefly about the story about my ex who used my vulnerability against me. So one of the things that I had to start asking myself and checking in with myself whenever I'm not gonna lie to you, for a while I really struggled with opening up to my partner. A question that I started asking myself to check in with my own self that really helped me, and I know this will help you too. I started asking myself, is this me or is it him? And what I mean by that is that when I struggle with trusting my partner, when I struggle with opening up to him, I ask myself, this lack of trust, is it me projecting onto him based on past experiences? Or has my partner given me a reason to doubt that I can trust him? Each time I ask myself that question, 99.99% of the time, it turns out I was projecting and my partner did not give me a reason not to trust him. Sometimes I was projecting based on my own past experience or because of someone else who I care about that I love dearly experiencing something terrible with your partner. So it was always a projection and never because he would give me reasons to not trust him. The times where, and I will say I'm really blessed, I have an amazing partner. The times where I felt that, I was not trusting him or I was doubting trusting him because of something that he said or did, we've had a conversation about it and it had just turned out that it was a misunderstanding or that, it's something that he did not really intend in a certain way. But most of the time, pretty much all the time, it turns out I was projecting. So this leads me to make a note, right? When you check in with yourself and you notice that you are projecting and that your partner has given you no reason to not trust them, I want you to really take a step back and have a conversation with your partner, right? Be vulnerable and explain to your partner that, listen, I experienced this thing in my past and sometimes it makes it hard for me to completely open up and trust, but I want to work on it. Something else that I want to encourage of you is that if your partner absolutely is giving you reasons to not trust them, then you may have to have a conversation about that, right? You might want to talk about how you personally feel that you need to build trust among yourselves. You also want to talk about, even with yourself, think about, if your partner is absolutely giving reasons to not trust them, then is that a relationship you want to be a part of, right? So I don't want to say go ahead and leave your relationship, but it can be either A, your partner is giving you reasons to not trust them, but it's probably something they're doing unintentionally. So have a conversation. Or B, your partner is absolutely giving you a reason not to trust them, and it's something that they're pretty much aware of. They don't seem to show concern of changing. Then think to yourself, do you want to be a part of that relationship? Because that may sound like a pretty toxic relationship. So I hope these 3 tips really help you with how to open up to others without getting hurt. Listen, just know that when it comes to vulnerability, it is not a rush. I absolutely encourage it. There are so many benefits to being vulnerable, but also know that you can absolutely take precaution, especially in the beginning if you don't trust someone. So if you want to hear more about the contents that I make, follow me at my website at mamanncooper.com. You can also go directly to my blog, mamanncooper.com/blog. Look in the description below as well because there are information there for you and links for you to click on. I love to hear your feedback. You can follow me on social media platforms, all links in the description below. And I love to hear your thoughts. Comment below which of these tips are you more likely going to absolutely start using as of today? And also, what other contents around this topic would you love for me to make more videos and writing about? I love to hear feedback. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I trust that this video was absolutely helpful to you. By the way, comment and like this video, and also make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel as well. Thank you guys. Love you.